Greetings, Elwood City Limits listeners. It's Will, and yes, we have a bit of a different episode this time around because Lucas is going to be away for the next couple of weeks. As I've explained in the last couple of podcasts, don't mean to inundate you with this information, but that means we're going to be having some guests on the show, and I will be getting to this episode with today's guest in just a little bit. I want to take care of a couple of things up top here before we get started. Of course, one of the things that I want to be able to do here is to thank our Patreons. Patreon.com/Elwood City Limits is where you can support us. Right now, we have a full two-parter available of our sister podcast, ECL Origins, all about mainframe entertainment, where we talk about Reboot and we talk about Beast Wars. Me and Lucas, we love both of those shows, and we have some fun discussions about them. So you can check those out. And coming up for patrons in the first week of October, Lucas and I are going to be talking about Angelina Ballerina on our other sister podcast, For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. So you have that to look forward to. You also have officially dozens of hours of, well, I think we recently passed hundreds of hours of extra podcasts, videos, and more exclusive content you can only get by paying what you want and subscribing at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. Just like some of these fine people. Want to say thank you to people like Christine Wong and Sierra S., to Nicholas DeMarco and Vinny Cataldo. Thank you to Jay Wags and Derek Richopo. Thank you to Americana Dream and RPG Fiend. And thank you, RPG Fiend, for boosting the ECL Discord server once again. Really appreciate you doing that. KDP and Mamata, thank you very much. Ryui and Nick Vuono, thank you. And thank you to Maisie Rose Sterling and to Iman Salehian. Thank you all. If you haven't heard your name said in a while, I'm not leaving you out on purpose. Let me know. Send me a message on Discord or on Patreon, and I'd be happy to put your name in the next thank you roll. We're going to be taking a little bit of a break on reading emails for the next couple of weeks. If you do want to send them in, elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. I just prefer to do the emails while Lucas is here, and something tells me you prefer that as well. Really quick, I don't normally do this kind of correction corner thing here, but this is something that was pervasive in the episode where we talked about the Downton Abbey parody on Arthur, and I was saying left and right that a certain Dame Judi Dench was all over Downton Abbey, PBS's Downton Abbey. Boy, was I wrong about that one. And thankfully, someone lovingly let me know about it, and I haven't been fielding angry emails left and right about it yet. But I was wrong. I was thinking of Dame Maggie Smith. That I believe that's the character that DW is playing in Downton Abbey, and she is definitely the older British actress that I was thinking of who is on the real Downton Abbey. So I meant Maggie Smith. My apologies. We're going to get into the episode in just a minute. I will just take a minute to let you know what's coming up on the next ECL episode. Returning guest Rage is going to be with me for that one, and we're going to be talking about the episodes 2 Minutes and Messy Dress Mess. So that'll be the next time on Elwood City Limits. And now it's time to take you to today's episode, where I will be speaking with the members of the Wheel of Scoob podcast, Dr. Colton and Foxy. Here we go. Enjoy. Well, this is a very interesting situation. We always find ourselves in interesting situations whenever Lucas is called away to one part of the globe or another, or at least one part of the country, one part of the continent. Yeah, that's the one. And this time, I thought that it would be fun to up the stakes a little bit, such as it is. I'm joined today by not one, not two, but 3 guests, and I'm pretty sure this is the most amount of guests I've ever had for one recording of Elwood City Limits, and what better guests could it be? I was recently on their podcast. In fact, I've been on their podcast twice, and I thought I wanted to bring them into the world of Arthur, just as they've whisked me away into the world of Scooby-Doo. It's the hosts of the Wheel of Scoob podcasts, Dr. Colton and Dame Dr. Foxy Brown. Hey, everybody, it's great to be talking to you guys again.
Oh, why did you decide to do this? This is too much power you give to us.
I did warn our audience that, well, maybe warn is a little strong, but I was like, hey, This one is going to be a little bit more like our Wheel of Scoob episodes because I think more people should be listening to Wheel of Scoob. It's a really good podcast and a fun project as well. So I figured this was a good opportunity to do that. So this is going to be a little bit different than an ECL podcast with a singular guest or with Lucas. And hey, if you like what you hear, there is so much more of this available with myself and with other great guests, but we'll get into the plugs at the end of the episode. What I am very interested in here is that I think we're dealing with very differing experiences with Arthur, and I'm keen to get into this. So before we talk about the episode, I'd like to do singular introductions, and we'll start off with the recurring guest here. He's part of the official roster. That would be Doctor. So Doc, it's great to hear from you again, the podcast master. The last time you were here was, I want to say, maybe a year or two ago. I really need to start looking this stuff up. But you've spoken about your experience with Arthur before. But for those who may be listening for the first time, where do you come into Arthur as we are here in season 18? What's your experience with the show?
I feel like I'm gonna. I feel like it's a problem because now I'm gonna probably completely contradict myself if anyone goes to the old audio. But if I were to guess, I'd probably say I might have said that I would say, a somewhat varied experience with Arthur. Like a majority of my watching through PBS as a whole only stretched for like certain things. I might have mentioned Ghost Rider at one point or another. I'm sure I did at least. As far as like, it's things with like, because that was like kind of like a whodunit with a weird little ball. And which makes sense because it eventually would lead to me to discovering other things in that realm of like whodunits and what have you. I like mystery stuff. But Arthur was always like a show that was, I would catch it and I'll catch, if it's on, it's on. I might have been sick from school or something and it happened to be on and I just watch it. But that's about most of my experience with it.
And you have, of course, been on Elwood City Limits before, and we're getting into a little bit of a new era of Arthur. So your reaction to this new look to the show is going to be one I'll be interested in hearing. Now, I'm going to go over to Colton now. Colton, it's great to welcome you to the show. Before I ask, can you give us a little bit of an idea about, before the show, I was like, your internet fame, such as it is, or what have you, but like... I don't know. How would you describe yourselves for people hearing you for the first time?
Oh boy, that's a tall order. Well, I would describe myself as a guy on the internet who talks about things. It's a very, very interesting hook. Never seen that before. I would definitely describe myself as a podcaster, TM. I just like Doctor. I've been podcasting for way too long. Doctor has been podcasting for slightly longer than I have, but I've still been podcasting for a very long time at this point, 10 years, I think. And I basically podcast about kind of whatever I feel like, basically whatever hyperfixation comes near my way. I started off podcasting about a little show called Gintama, specifically about the manga. I'm a big anime and manga fan, just like, Doctor and Foxy are as well. And then we eventually, from me starting to do my own stuff, we all just kind of started doing stuff together, and now we're basically the main hosts of the Ass Backwards Anime podcast, which is basically where a lot of our shows kind of like stem from. And that's really kind of about it, like the long and short of it, honestly.
And what's your experience with Arthur been in your life?
It's an interesting question, because Arthur is definitely one of those things that I remember watching as a kid. I don't really remember how frequently I watched it, but I feel like there was a point in my life, like as a kid, specifically like when I was going to elementary school, like I do remember for a while, like catching a lot of the PBS lineup, whatever that may have been, like after school, whenever I would get home, either that or Toonami, one of the two. And Arthur was definitely something that, like, if I caught it, I would watch it. And I definitely had a lot of fun watching it as a kid. I want to say probably when I got into middle school, I was watching it less, obviously, as I grew older. And then I think when I got into high school, I'm pretty sure I stopped watching it around then. So, not to get into too much, but coming back into the show and watching it for, this podcast today was definitely an interesting experience. I I definitely see Arthur as one of those things where it's like it's an animated show that's been running for a very long time. It has, and maybe you could talk more on this, Will, but like I feel like Arthur probably has like a, I don't know what you would call it, like a set like golden era almost, and then maybe the fandom thinks like the rest of it's bad or something. I don't know. I just kind of it feels like that's probably the case, as it is with like a lot of other long running cartoons, you know. So I don't know. It was really interesting coming back to it after so long, because I don't think I had watched this in like probably easily a decade. So yeah, this was definitely really interesting to come back.
Well,
to.
as you say, Colton, with a lot of long-running, especially animated shows, there are the periods that people hold up in the highest regard.
Yes.
And then there are the more controversial ones. We find ourselves in a bit of a controversial one here because...
Okay.
Well,
okay.
I'd like to get into that after we talk to our final guest, Foxy. So, Foxy, as with Colton, who are you and what are you doing here?
I feel like there's a lot of pressure to live up to everything that was said. I have no internet notoriety. I am mostly the person whose bedroom the Ass Backwards Anime podcast was founded in.
Yes.
Ooh,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know
years
this.
ago.
Pretty much, yeah. So I feel like I almost set up Will to fail here by not saying that that Foxy has been essentially the second host of our entire projects, everything we have done so far, with the exception of like one show that she has no interest in, which is our Detective Conan podcast. But yeah, Foxy has been there since the beginning, so it's been us two pretty much. With we had a third, and obviously it's the problem with life. It's just we have to move on at points, and it's just. Colton found a way to sneak into our lives, and
somehow,
and then that's kind of where we're at now. But Foxy's been here forever.
I like this. I'm very engaged right now. I'm finding out about the secret history, and by secret history I mean I never asked because I'm weird and awkward.
you're finding out a lot of lore this episode.
Yeah.
Yes. Foxy, your viewpoint is one that I'll be very interested in throughout this episode because you've never seen Arthur before?
Okay, so more lore. I am actually old. Not like ancient, but old enough to where I think this not only would have missed me, but also would have missed like my youngest sibling.
Oh.
So there was like, and he's the youngest of all of my cousins. On one side, so that basically meant that there was no real reason to see Arthur. And PBS kind of was not a part of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of it as I got older, and like I saw people. By the time I knew what it was, I think I was too old to care.
I see. Okay, like and I'm not being facetious when I say like your viewpoint on this is like we've never had anybody on the show who is truly coming at this for the first time, and I think we almost take it for granted of like, well, of course everybody knows what Arthur is, but no, not necessarily. And so I was getting excited when I saw you tweet the other day about something about this episode, and I'm just like, oh, I can't wait to find out what you think about the various things and just like seeing the show with new eyes. So I'm very, very happy to have all three of you here and to talk about an episode that I think in one sense it's a good beginner episode, but in another sense I imagine there's going to be a bit of explaining I'll have to do. So if at any point throughout this you're wondering about any sort of reference, or if there's literally just I don't know who this character is, I would be happy to fill you in. But this is why I think it's fun to reach outside of our universe every now and again, is to find new ways into Arthur. And that's one of the reasons why I started podcasting, was to find community, and that's what I'm hoping to do here. And what's another way to say community? Family. well, okay, maybe that's a little strong for what we've got going on here. Like, hey, I like you guys, but like, I'll have to actually get to know you a little bit better before we start using the F word family around each other. If that's okay.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's fine. I sometimes use the F word way too much.
So today, the episodes that we were talking about, it's in the middle of season 18. And this would be around, I think we determined this was 2013 to 2014. So, Doc, the last time you were on the show, we were still in traditional animation. By now, we have moved into what we are colloquially calling flash animation. It's not exactly that. It's a bit more complicated than that, but it is essentially what this type of animation is referred to. As someone, and Colton, I would be interested if you have any thoughts on this as well. Moving from the traditional Arthur animation, a lot of the memes that you see are in that more traditionalized animation. Of course, This show started in the 90s. It had the cell animation. Then it moved on to animation that was digitally assisted by computers. Now this is completely done through computer programs. This is something that we end up asking a lot of our guests who are coming into this era of Arthur. What do you think of the look of the show?
I feel like if you had shown this to me like maybe 5 years ago or something, like I would have said like, oh, this looks terrible. I don't want to watch this. But I don't know. It is a little jarring to kind of go from, again, the more traditionally animated Arthur episodes, the ones from the 90s and so on. Because again, for as long as I've been away from Arthur, that's like the era that I am the most comfortable with, I guess. And like I kind of knew that like the show looked like this already. Like I had seen like clips here and there, So I kind of knew about this going in, but like actually watching a full episode in this style, like I don't think it's bad. Like I think it's clearly like we need like a cheaper way to produce the show, probably, is what I'm guessing. I don't know. The thing that like really impressed me, and I don't know if like you've already talked about this on the show in a past episode or not, I genuinely couldn't tell, because like basically the opening, the opening that us Arthur fans know and love, with the theme song and everything, that I'm glad that they didn't change that, because I think that would actually be a crime if they did. It's already perfect. Don't change a thing. It's seriously like probably one of my favorite like cartoon openings ever. Like the song is catchy as hell. But I'm really surprised at like, because I genuinely can't tell if it's like a recreation of the original opening or if it's like the opening but it was somehow like preserved in HD and in widescreen. Like it's actually really hard for me to tell like which is which.
Yeah, it is essentially they redrew the original opening, but they also put it into a new aspect ratio. So there are elements of it like there are parts of the image that you were never able to see in the original opening, but then they had to like completely animate it. So there's one of the noticeable parts for me at least is in the part in the opening where Arthur and Mom are in the photo and they give each other a hug. Now in this, you can see baby Kate. Yeah. Whereas in the like standard 4:3 version, she was completely out of frame. So they had to just basically animate her from scratch. But the rest of it is exactly how it looked in the original opening, but it just like recolored so it looks brighter and it moves more accordingly with the house style.
Okay, like seriously, this looks so good that I genuinely thought they like preserved it. Like, again, I'm gonna talk about other long running animated things, because again, with stuff like The Simpsons, Family Guy, SpongeBob, those kinds of things, like eventually they do the same thing where it's like, oh, we're gonna recreate the opening in like newer animation or whatever to kind of update the look of it. Those usually always look worse somehow than their original opening, because like, especially with like The Simpsons and Family Guy, like the newer HD version of their older openings, like the animation always looks so like stilted and lifeless somehow. Like it just doesn't look. I don't think it looks that good personally. It just feels wrong. Whereas like I had like no issue with this. I was like, wow, like the attention to detail and the way they went out of the way to recreate the old opening for this is honestly amazing.
And Foxy, as somebody who and let me ask, was this specifically the first Arthur episode in full you've ever watched ever?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to give you some leeway here if I want you to be honest. And it's okay if that means that it's more on the negative side. Literally, I plunked this episode down in front of you, essentially, and just all right, watch this, and then we'll talk about it. What, upon seeing it, seeing the way it looked, the way it moved, what was your first impression?
I don't know. I don't think I had any expectations for how the episode looked. Outside of seeing stills before, obviously, maybe I think I saw a short clip from the finale episode where it's showing everybody grown up. I don't know why I was invested in that. I had no idea who anybody was. So yeah, I don't feel. I guess because it's a kids show, I have extremely lowered expectations. Mm-hmm. I think it cleared those. I think it looked fine. Yeah, I'll go with that. It looked fine.
Okay, but hey, I'll take fine. Lucas and I had to go through our own arc of getting used to this style, and now we're in a place where we're cool with it. But we were had our backs against the wall about it for a long time. So we've come to a place of understanding, and I always appreciate, like I say, seeing this through new eyes. So the first story we're talking about here is called Whip Mix Blend. This is in the middle of season 18. And Arthur's talking about families. And literally, the first lines of this episode, perfect introduction for anyone who's not familiar with Arthur, because Arthur literally names the members of his family. And
I basically knew him and DW, and that's it.
Those are the only two characters you were familiar with?
Yes.
Arthur's talking about families here, and he mentions how in the animal kingdom, families can be different. And before we continue, did this provoke any discrepancies in you? Was this like a hang on a second sort of thing for you? Because there's a very particular part of Arthur that we've been dealing with for the past 7 years, and I wondered if this was the part that opened it up for you.
I would probably lend into this sort of are they trying to imply a slightly more progressive ideas as what family is? And I think that was the mom. I was like, oh, okay, I could, sure. Hey, look at that. This is their way of kind of sort of saying kind of different things where hey, what if a family can be 2 dads and 1 mom, which is cool, very non-traditional. I think the idea of hey, it's okay that families are not necessarily always going to look the same. Even if for a family of just I think what was the elephant family was having all the women kind of take care of the baby, which I mean you can that can be written anyway or not I guess viewed anyway. But the idea is you don't have to have a man in the family is another way of looking at that. You could read it that way. Mm-hmm. And but it's and then for him to pose the question to the audience of hey, what does your family look like? Kind of nice. It's sort of hey, look, everyone has traditional, non-traditional, however you want to call it, families, and I think that's kind of cool. Just that a kids show is kind of trying to say all these are all valid.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that about the episode too, honestly.
See, this is the analysis that I should have trusted you guys with, because you've been podcasters for so long. You are so used to taking something and taking it seriously and interacting with it seriously and coming away with very interesting and profound thoughts. What I was interested in is if you saw this and were like, wait, how come those animals can't talk? I was waiting for it. I was like, somebody's going to be like, yeah, okay, question before we go on. How come those animals can't talk, but then Arthur can? And I was like, well,
I was going to bring it up.
Knuckles, here we go.
I was going to bring it up with the raccoon and later in the episode, but I was waiting for you to get to it.
Look, Will, I think from a very young age, we're all familiar with the Goofy and Pluto conundrum. So I didn't even bat an eye at this, honestly.
Yeah. they are called funny animals. That's the thing, Colton. So, like, Pluto is still a dog. As far as Disney's concerned, Pluto is the dog, but Goofy is a funny animal. There's a difference.
I honestly just assumed Arthur was talking about animals in our world, and that's why they don't talk.
Your guess is as good as mine. With this is something that we've been dealing with. Like it took Lucas and I about like an in-podcast year of like discussions about what we refer to as the animal hierarchy in Arthur before we got to the term funny animals, and then that spun off a discussion even further from there. So, but again, you guys are very used to speaking about animation and cartoons. I should have figured that you're like, oh yeah, and animals. Like, I'm just always at any time I'm ready to be like somebody to be like, hey, how come those animals can talk? And I was like, well, we've been let me talk about. Let me bring 7 years of experience.
I think it was just like, oh, unfortunately, we have a lot of good media literacy in this podcast, so it's like, oh yeah, we forgot. We should also read into the silliness of it all. Of just like, oh yeah, why do animals talk? I don't know.
Yeah, some things we just kind of accept, honestly.
Now, okay, so this episode is actually not concerning it's not concerning Arthur, which, again, this has become par for the course, is that Arthur usually does the cold open, which is the segment before the title card, and then it could be about anybody from there. In fact, this episode doesn't involve Arthur at all. So if that was a surprise, apologies. Like, if Arthur brought you to the party and then he left and you're just like, who are these people? I don't know anybody. Like, I'm sorry.
I didn't get to the fireworks factory.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I actually do want to ask something because I've been away from Arthur for a very long time, so
yeah,
it was a really nice surprise to see that, like, because this story in particular is focused on like Rattles and basically Binky and his posse or whatever. That, like, I do remember being characters from the few times I did watch the show, but I guess I wasn't expecting a whole story about them, or at least one of their friends or whatever. Like, do these characters have stories very often? I'm assuming not.
So for the beginning of the show, not really. Binky, who wears the orange shirt, and I will Foxy, I will make sure to describe them in appearance just so that we can keep it straight. I'm not just like, you know who Binky is, you know who Rattles is, you know who Slink is. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to assume anybody's
right.
Like, I had a follow-up question as to whether their names were themed, but Slink threw it off completely, so I'll keep that question to myself.
What was the theme? What did you think was the theme?
Baby Rattle, what was the name of the other one?
Binky?
Oh my god, so Rattles,
Binky.
Yeah.
But then there's Molly and Slink. So
yeah, I don't
Slinky?
know. I do babies slink? I feel like there are some babies that are a bit slinky.
Well, everybody loves a slinky, so maybe the babies do too. So I guess it would make sense.
Truly the greatest question that any human being is asked: do babies slink?
I never put together the Binky and Rattles thing before. This is the type of observations that you only get from people who aren't consuming Arthur every single week. This is great. So yeah, Colton, to your question, this group is called the Tough Customers. They were around.
Love it. Honestly, that's great.
Yeah,
that's a perfect gang name.
It rocks, actually. So they've been around in some form or another since the first season. Binky is a main character on the show. The other three, so Rattles has been seen since season 1, as has Molly, who is the girl with the hair over her eyes, and then Slink was around. He had an episode in season 2, and then he was slowly made into a background character in this gang. Actually, fun fact: Slink's voice actor is the original voice actor for Arthur.
Oh wow!
Like from way back in 1996.
It's kind of like a Hey Arnold thing.
What do you mean? I don't know if I get that.
Oh yeah, and Nickelodeon's Hey Arnold. The original voice of Arnold, obviously they were kids.
Yes.
Arnold grew up after a while, and was eventually replaced by a new actor. But the original actor would come back as like the bully character at one point. I forgot the name of the character, unfortunately, but
Was it Harold?
not Harold. He's like a older grade bully character.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually, I think there was another episode where they replaced the. I think it may have been the movie or something. They replaced the actor for Arnold again, and then that previous actor became a different bully.
Wow. That's
I
great.
didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So they are essentially meant to be bully characters. Now, as the show has gone along, and we've kind of had episode after episode after episode with every single main character and then some, in the past few seasons, I would say from season 18 to like the double-digit seasons for sure, we started to use these characters a bit more and flesh them out. And Lucas and I usually find like they are some of the most fun characters in the show. Like we love Binky. Binky is maybe the show's favorite character next to DW.
Okay.
But like Rattles, we love Rattles. Love Molly. Slink doesn't have too much of a character. He's kind of more of a toady. But Rattles and Molly, like we love them. So I was really excited for this specific episode because it's all about Rattles. And the whip, mix, and blend has to do with Rattles' family because we find out this. Speaking of lore, I'm learning about the Ass Backwards Anime Podcast Network, and now we're learning deep lore about Rattles here because we find out that he is in a single-parent household, and his mom has started dating a guy named Archie Vanderloo. Now, there's a few characters here that I'm going to assume are one-offs or like they're not going to stick around. Like a lot of characters who show up at this point in Arthur very rarely become regulars, or they have like one appearance and then like make a couple of cameos. None of them stick as well as, except for like a scant few, as the main cast has. So, if you're like, hey, can you have me on for the next Ansel and Angie episode or whatever their name is? I don't know if that's going to happen.
Oh, wow.
Archie Vanderloo is this guy's name. He is... Rattles thinks he's cool. Like, Rattles... It's funny. One of my favorite episodes of the first season is the one that introduces Rattles, and he starts off as, like... He's got this hilarious voice. I mean, it's one of my favorite episodes of the podcast, because it's just me and Lucas, like, killing ourselves laughing, because they make him... It's like a 1996 version of a bully, and it's the same design here. So he's got the backwards baseball cap, the leather jacket, the jeans, but he has this... He sounds like he's 25, because he's just like... Because he'll have lines like, the rabbit stays, and it's like, it's as deep as my voice. Or like, let's split, recess is over. And
What?
one of my favorite line from that episode, I just love to bring this up whenever I can. It's the name of our episode because Arthur is trying to sort of pledge his way into the tough customers, and he makes it out to seem like he got into a confrontation with the principal, and Rattles says, "You old con artist, I bet you had him going in circles," and he like punches the air. So flash forward 18 seasons, and here's the Rattles we have today, and he's this relatively genteel, like good mama's boy who is also protesting a chicken restaurant.
Yes. I thought that part at the end was like, wait, are these, what's going on? And then when you mentioned they were supposed to be like the bully characters, like, yeah, I guess they were, but also, God, these kids seem like kind of just pretty well together. They're not really doing much. They seem like just regular kids.
There was a semi-recent episode in our timeline where instead of the tough customers, they became the tough consumers, and
okay.
their new thing is like Rattles even has a line here where the tough customers are planning to protest a restaurant called Sticky Chicken, and Rattles can't go because he has to spend the weekend with Archie Vanderloo and his two kids. And Rattles says, "Believe me, there's nothing I'd rather do than dress up as poultry and publicly shame a corporate juggernaut." And it's like, that's just kind of where they are right now. They're not really bullies anymore. They're kind of little socialists.
Yeah. Instead of bullying grade schoolers, they're going to bully corporations. Like I can get into that. That's the kind of arc I want to see.
Oh, I can only imagine their tweets.
Now that's, maybe when the podcast is over, like you'll know that I'm still around when I like set up a Blue Sky account and it's like the Tough Customers Central or something. Just like
gonna be
BRB gonna take down capitalism or whatever.
Gonna be going all around the world, publicly protesting against every kind of corporation you can, in a chicken costume.
Constantly getting canceled for having just a decent car. It's like, guys, fortunately that's okay.
An iPhone.
An iPhone, yeah. Like, unfortunately, this is how the world works sometimes. You can't really do much. You can only do some, hey, what are you gonna do?
And they're like only 8 or 9 years old, so like their brains aren't developed enough to like understand gray areas. So like, woe betide the day that the Tough Customers get Tumblr. Like,
ooh.
They're gonna have some serious feelings about fandom and ships.
God.
They will be the newest inductees into the Skeleton War.
And they're gonna get called like woke online for doing like for the base level of activism or something. I don't know.
Yes, I can't wait until one of them gets ratioed. Or they're gonna ratio somebody, I should say.
We're gonna get pretty close to like modern day when we get to the end of Arthur. I'm pretty sure it managed to avoid woke, but like if it had had a season or two more, there might have been an episode where like Mr. Ratburn gets woke or something. Like, I mean, there's always that risk.
I mean, to be fair, the entire like animal family thing, you can be considered woke in, unfortunately, today's nowadays, I guess, if anything, because it just seems like oh wow, that's actually kind of nice and slightly progressive if you actually really think about it. But yeah, and obviously this is like a story about, hey, here is my mom possibly marrying into another family, and so now you have to deal with your step siblings or soon to be step siblings, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So let's take stock of this family here, because we are at the same point here. I've never met these people before. I'm meeting them for the first time, and I'm talking about Archie Vanderloo and his twins, Angie and Ansel. So Rattles likes Archie. He seems to be a world traveler, brings him back some souvenirs, but he's a little too well-traveled, a little too cultured. Like, Rattles talks about how he cooks these complicated dinners, including Eiffel Towers made of mashed yams.
Yeah, see, I'm conflicted, right? Because I do think that is a little extra, but also, I would eat an Eiffel Tower made out of yams. I'd do it at least once.
I feel like at a certain point I would have... I mean, I'm trying to think of it from the perspective of a child who kind of used to just general, like, basic stuff. Like, hey, a meatloaf. I'm Hispanic, so chicken and rice and beans and stuff like that.
Chicken nuggets, mac and cheese. I don't know.
Mac and cheese. Hell, a pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Something pretty simple. Burgers. Nothing crazy. Like, you're giving me, like, shaped... like themed dinners. At a certain point, I'm like, dude, relax.
You guys are in the States. Do you guys have Zappums over there?
I don't know what that is.
I beat either. What are those?
They're basically TV dinners.
Okay.
Yeah, they're basically made for little kids because they're like little fries and little nuggets, or like pizza-shaped pasta, and that was the first thing that came to mind when you were like a typical child cuisine. It's like,
oh, what's the kid cuisine?
I was gonna say you're unlocking a memory in me, because now I'm thinking about kid cuisine again, and I have not thought about kid cuisine in probably 15 years. So,
see, I've always been pretty fat, so I think my mom just upgraded me to Swanson's eventually, and was just like, yeah, that'll feed him. I think I probably overstepped kid cuisine quite quickly.
That's good, because I could never get that brownie right.
Oh God,
no,
yeah.
and there's always corn in it.
Yes, sorry, I'm just having all kinds of kid cuisine memories now. Thanks, because you're right.
Kid cuisine isn't a Canada thing.
God.
Okay, so can you just quickly explain kid cuisine? Like, I'm Canadian. I don't think we had those.
I mean, it's pretty much like I literally did a quick Google of Zappums. It's essentially as it is. It's just it's a TV dinner type thing with whether it's like I think they have like chicken nuggets and corn, sometimes with mac and cheese. I think I've seen like like, those are the ones I usually see as kid cuisines. But then again, like it's one of those things where nowadays, like I pass that completely and I turn a blind eye on those when I pass by like the frozen food section, so I don't even notice it anymore.
How many kid cuisines do you think it would take to like fill you today as an adult?
2 probably.
Like 2, but honestly, even after 1, I'd be like, I don't want this anymore.
The problem with most of these TV dinner type things is that, like, even if you were like, oh, this is kind of a decent pasta thing, where it's like, okay, like a chicken parm sort of mac and cheese thing, which that sounds terrible. But
I don't trust kid cuisine chicken parm.
no, I'm not going to even
No,
put that out
out
there.
there.
I'm just saying, in general, like most of the like frozen food, microwavable kind of meals never really end up going well. Even if you want to try, like, I have like the lean cuisine to have like hey, this is healthier, but
Maybe
not by much.
Foxy kid cuisines, how many do you think?
0, because as soon as it came out of the microwave, I would change my mind.
It honestly, that's fair.
Like-
That's fair.
Like, I think
Yeah.
frozen foods for us was all like separate. Like, only one part of your meal was frozen.
Okay.
Like, if you bought a bag of chicken nuggets or whatever, or the bagel bites or pizza rolls or something like that. Never a whole meal.
Usually
You
like
cook it.
Yeah.
Like, you cook even if you can barely cook. Was sort of my experience growing up. And I knowing my parents, they would think this was a waste of money.
Right, so you would have part of the entree from the freezer, but then you'd add to it with like vegetables or like a fresher carb or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. No, that's good, and like should have done that myself
Hey,
15
same.
years
Yeah,
ago.
Yeah.
Too late for that now, but like I'll try to go back in time and tell myself, make some real vegetables with the Swanson Hungry Man. Like the beer battered chicken, why don't you make some frozen broccoli with that? The twins here, Angie and Ansel. I want to just remind you and those listening, everybody listening, that adults wrote this show. So when Rattles has trouble connecting with these two twins, and they have different personalities, Angie is really into. I wish one day I'm going to find an audio way to represent quote marks. Slang. She's into slang.
Yeah, that's her personality, it looks like.
But is it? Like, so I only asked that, Colton, because these words have only been said by somebody who is paid to say them. For example, this sentence that she says, and I quote, "Rattles, Frizzman, you're so Nova. Do you mush kitty pow pow? Aren't they dwell?"
I didn't really know what to think of this section, honestly. I was kind of flabbergasted. I was like, what are we doing here?
I kind of did the equivalent of passing by Kid Cuisine and just white it out whenever she spoke.
I think this is the inverse of Peanuts, where when the adults speak, they just hear the trombone. Like this is clearly like adults representing that they have no idea what the kids' slang sounds like. It just sounds like garbage words to them. It sounds like you're making noises that are almost words that I recognize, but when I listen closely, it's just nonsense. I think that's what they were going for here.
Yeah.
I feel like I have seen another show that did something like this, but I can't remember what it is to reference it properly.
Well, we've got some more slang coming up in a little bit, but I'm still like, I got a tear rolling down my cheek because I'm thinking, first of all, the reverse Peanuts of describing children speak that you can't understand. I'm going to remember that. But that also makes me think of what a trombone sounds like in reverse, and that's even funnier. Ugh, actually, no, I don't like that. I'm gonna try that on my own time, not where people can hear me.
I want to give the writers this. I do like that. Only like some people in this world speak this way, but like when the rest of the tough customers like try to stalk people in the mall and like try to write down and make up their own slang dictionary, I like that they're just as confused as the audience watching this. Like, I could relate to I could relate to Binky being like, I don't know. I guess I'll write it down. Sure. Like, I don't know.
It means something, I think.
Something. I will say, Simonize My Sideburns. That was the one that got the biggest laugh out of me.
As the tough customers are training Rattles to handle both Ansel and Angie. We'll get into Ansel in a second, but yeah, there is more slang here, and I feel since we're on the slang train here, it's very, it's kind of like the problem of when you watch old sci-fi, like let's say Alien, for example, and it's like in the 1970s, everybody just assumed we'd have VHS players until we were dead. Because how could you, as somebody in the 1970s, imagine what a DVD player is? Like, what a Blu-ray is? Like, thumb drives, any of that stuff. Like, you can't be expected to know that stuff. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
If you watch Zoolander.
So in this case, it's like, well, this is obviously no human that wasn't paid to say this has said this and meant it. But I have to give them some leeway here of like, you kind of just gotta throw something and see if it works. And every once in a while we get things that kind of sound like they could be used. Like none of this stuff really has ever been spoken aloud, but people using exclamations like fearsome or gigabad or tetrabad or melty, like those kind of sound like something you could say.
I guess gigabad to tetrabad makes sense to some degree.
Yeah,
but we're also not getting kids on TikTok saying "peep my sabbats, gup."
No, that's when I would probably delete the app or something, or find ways to delete the app from the internet, because I think at that point we've gone too far.
You brought up TikTok. I was thinking that like a lot of the slang said in this episode does sound like the kind of stuff that like these people on TikTok. Is there a word for the kind of TikToks that are going around right now where it's like them doing like, I don't know, NPC commands or something where they just kind of say nonsense? Or honestly, I have no idea. I have no idea what you call this.
Ice cream so good. Yes.
That's stuff. That's the stuff. That's the stuff that like makes me feel old.
Yeah, peep my sabbats, gup. By the way, sabbats are French for clogs.
Oh,
so
okay.
Thank you, Arthur Wiki, for letting me know about that. And Colton, the line you mentioned of somebody getting a gutter ball in bowling, Simonize my sideburns, now I'm smelted. That sounds like you're more committing to a bit. Like, that doesn't sound like teen slang. That's like the friend of yours growing up who's like, I'm going to talk like a 1920s gangster all the time. And you're like, okay, well,
all right.
This is annoying.
Yeah, 1920s
like, no.
gangster, old prospector, like, oh, Simonize my sideburns, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's who that is. I think like that's definitely the prospector in a Scooby-Doo episode from 1971.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, you guys haven't gone through the whole Scooby-Doovra yet.
Not yet.
But how many, like, what's the prospector to no prospector ratio? Like, how many prospectors are we talking here?
I think we've only done one.
I think we've definitely had less than 5.
Yeah,
which is surprising for 20 plus episodes.
I think you were on our one of our first WWE Scooby-Doo crossover movies, and I believe that was the one that actually has a prospector type character in there. But
was there?
Sort of. He was just like a woodsman. He was basically like a red herring for like, you shouldn't be in this WWE city. This Vince McMahon is ruining this country, and which is right. But
which that's definitely true.
Okay, yeah, no, that sounds familiar now.
As far as the movies go, like, I think we had like one. I'm sure there's like a ton of prospectors in like the shows and everything, but that's not what we're covering. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yet.
Yet.
That sounded like a threat to me.
Oh, please, Foxy, please don't make promises on another podcast that people can actually listen to.
That was definitely... The entire existence of Wheel of Scoob is an existential threat to me. So...
I've never heard a better way to sell that show. There's one note I wanted to make here because we have something of a one-off character here, Rattles' mom, and every once in a while I like to make note of a voice actor, and I figured this would be a good time to do that because I'm sure you guys are very up on voice actors as I am, or at least as I try to be. So Rattles' mom, who we see in a few scenes here and has a couple of lines, is played by an actor named, and I apologize for the pronunciation here, Anik Olbonsawin. Mm-hmm. And a couple of notable things here. So first of all, for any PBS fans listening, she's the voice of Inez on Cyber Chase.
Okay.
All right.
For any total drama heads, she's the
wow.
voice of Sierra.
From which season?
I just know the total drama is very popular among a subset of people, and I think some of them listen to our show.
I think one is Colton.
I've seen my share of total drama. I'm not sure if I know that character though.
Okay. And now the one that I thought was the most relevant here. In the dub for The Knights of the Zodiac, she was Makoto.
Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry. Which character?
Makoto or Makoto?
Oh, that's from the old Lights of the Zodiac. Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Knights of the Zodiac is a franchise that like Doc and I like just got into a couple years ago. Like, so
okay.
we are not very familiar with like that old dub, unfortunately.
Yeah, like
Gotcha.
And for for the sake of clarity, it's also known as primarily known as Saint Seiya.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to mention that because I remember watching like the brief time that it aired on Canadian television, the dub of the what was called Knights of the Zodiac. You're right, Saint Seiya. So my memory of it is poor, but I think you guys probably know at least a little bit more about it than I do. Anyway, I think she does a good job here. I just wanted to note that here for fans of those respective franchises. Really quickly, before I forget to talk about him, the other twin, whose name is Ansel, is very energetic and very competitive, but in a positive way. So he's always kind of up and doing things, and so he's like doing arm wrestling with Rattles, he's playing ping pong, and he's very competitive, but he's always very encouraging, which I'm into that. Like, not into that, but like I appreciate people who can be competitive without being babies about it.
Yeah, being
like
jerks.
that's a huge like I just despise that trait in people who are competitive and sore losers.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm not into that either. I do kind of wonder though, because like there's a point, and I hate to skip like all the way to the end, but there is a point later on where like Rattles does kind of like sort of make up with the twins and kind of like, you know, tells them like, hey, we kind of have to like get along with each other and kind of like come to a compromise on some things. And
yeah,
and Rattles being like, well, or what was it? Ansel being like, no, you're actually pretty good, and Rattles is like, no, I literally failed like every round we did, and Ansel was like,
yeah,
oh yeah, you were actually kind of terrible. Like I almost kind of wonder. I don't know if it's really the same thing, but I feel like that's the kind of thing that could like maybe sort of inch its way towards like a toxic positivity, like, you know, telling somebody, like encouraging somebody when like they're just absolutely bad and maybe they should like, I don't know, take a break and maybe reassess.
You're right. That is where we're getting to here in this weekend that Rattles is spending with the Vanderloos. The tough customers are helping to train him to get him ready for this level of energy. So they use various methods. So Molly basically puts him in a room with her little brother whose name is James, and he's very calm, but then puts him with DW and some of the show's other very rambunctious kids to get him ready for this. They also give him a emergency energy concoction made of wheatgrass, kale, and spirulina, which we see later, as you mentioned earlier, Doctor, there's a raccoon that ends up drinking it, and it seems quite effective. Yeah, I would have never guessed that these could have given you that kind of energy. That the raccoon drinks it after Rattles drops it, and he runs up a tree with a smoke trail and then starts pointing like a dog. And that was the thing, Doc, that gave you the animal hierarchy that made that kind of light flash in your head.
Sort of, because at a certain point I wonder, like, I forget at what level of animals are there in this world. So I was like, I guess, are there no raccoon people?
I don't think so. There's such arbitrary lines as to which animals become people. It's not like BoJack Horseman, where it's like you have the most ridiculous animals that also walk on two legs and are humanoid. So there are some animals that are definitely have never been, but that might be a question for our listeners. Raccoon people on the show. I want to say no.
Like that's not something you've come across even once.
I can't say, like, there may have been like a background character. There's never been I don't believe there's been a major raccoon character in the show, if my memory serves me correctly.
I think it's just at that point it's just like what constitutes an animal to be. What traits does an animal need to have to be a person in this world?
Yeah, like
brother, how much time you got?
What animals are allowed to be sentient? I guess
dogs can and can't, obviously, because of his pet. It's weird.
To be or not to be, man, that is the question. You know, like
that kind of makes me wonder, like, what does it feel like to be an animal that is sentient, and then also see another animal that you're very closely related to, like, be either treated as livestock or raised as a pet? How does that then build your, like, political consciousness? Like, if you're let's say like a cow person, and even if like your friends aren't carnivores, but like they drink cow milk, like how do you, like, is that not weird for you?
Maybe. I mean, it's like, they were processing a chicken restaurant thing or food chain or whatever. Like, are there chicken people?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, because at that point, that's like a level of like messed up if that were the case. Because like, wow.
I was gonna say, like, I think that is literally an episode of BoJack Horseman.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was. Yeah, that was an episode of BoJack. But yeah, it's like a level of like, I guess because most avian animals are probably not people generally, so obviously any kind of bird or whatever. We see more birds later in the next episode, but it's just funny to see, like, oh yeah, there's only so many things that are allowed to be people.
I guess so. I
mean, you guys are cutting to the core of what we've been dipping in and out of since this podcast started. Of just like these really are the deep philosophical questions of the Arthur iceberg, such as it is, of just like, where does consciousness begin? Who determines? And I mean, I guess the answer here is God / Mark Brown, you know? So the writer, the capital T, capital W, the writer. But I think that these are fun and interesting questions to ask, and I'm happy whenever our listeners do and when our guests do, because too often we take it for granted of like, yeah, this is an animal, this isn't. And then I don't mean this to sound insulting, but it is like a child asking, well, why? Like, you know, I don't know why. And it stops you. It snaps you out of like your automatic processing of the show. I should say my automatic processing of the show. And it's just like the questions that you put forth here, all three of you, just like, I don't know. And I feel like I could think about it for a long time.
How does Binky think about Pal?
Well, and then that, I really, really don't want to get into it right now, but there's the whole thing of like, there are episodes where we see that Pal and various other cats and dogs have some form of sentience and communication with each other.
As does
the baby.
I can't do that.
Me neither, but we keep doing it.
I don't know why I had such a visceral reaction to that. I just don't like that idea.
I don't like it either.
We can't let them think, Colton. What if they learn? They'll rise up and take over this world.
God, cats and dogs working together. I just can't help but think about there maybe being an episode where like Arthur's at the zoo, maybe he sees like another anteater, and he just has like a complete like existential crisis that ruins him for the rest of his life.
It's like, why are you naked?
all good questions, and thank you for asking them. I have no answers for you.
Okay.
Love it.
Okay.
That's just the way it is, I'm afraid. So just feels back. So Rattles is spending the weekend with the Vanderloos.
Yeah, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah. Going quickly back to the slang here, and maybe I'll just kind of put a bow on this. A lot of the youth slang, as they imagine it, is directions. So, like, when Angie is speaking, she'll be like, "I hit snooze on that one." She even does like a legitimate check, please.
I hate
She doesn't say it like that, but she does say check, please. She also seems to, I don't know, speak Latin at some point. Like, when it gets to the point where at the end of the episode, Rattles comes to the two of them and is just like, we need to kind of find a way to meet each other on common ground. And he admits it, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And Angie says, no pro novo silato. And I was like, is this like from an Assassin's Creed game or something? Like,
I'm about to desync myself right now.
I'm about to hit.
Rattles finds out. His mom has tried to tell him a couple of times, but then Ansel, terrible name, lets it slip that Rattles' mom and Archie have gotten engaged and are getting married. This is also a first for Arthur. We see Rattles without his baseball cap.
Whoa.
I think his hair makes him look like he's 40.
He kind of has this sort of mullet-esque looking thing going on there.
I'm not gonna lie, Will. When you said earlier, like when you reminded us, oh, this particular group of kids is like 8 or 9 years old, that did kind of send me down a spiral a little bit, because it's like, no, these kids are like 15, right? At least.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I was gonna say these are like middle school kids or something like that. I was like, all right, no, they're like super young.
These do not look like grade school kids to me, honestly.
No, their designs definitely don't make them look like... I think Binky is in the same grade as Arthur. Like, all of the characters in Arthur's grade are 8. Binky is 9 because he was held back a grade. I want to say that, like, Rattles and Molly, I believe, are his age, so they're supposed to be 9, like, maybe 10.
Okay.
But yeah, they look like little teenagers.
I honestly, I'd even go as old as like 25 for them in particular, honestly.
You think so?
I think so.
Maybe. I mean, they're protesting fast food chains, so I mean,
Yeah, that's in a really advanced level of social awareness for 8-year-olds or 9-year-olds.
Absolutely.
Rattles is surprised by this, but eventually accepting, and there is a mention of his dad as well. So he is a child of divorce, is Rattles, and his dad apparently approves of this remarriage, which allows him to come to an understanding with Ansel and Angie, since they are becoming family, and that is the blending together of their family into one. And he eventually invites them to the protest of the chicken restaurant along with the tough customers. Now, one of the things that we end on in this episode is that Rattles introduces them to a food he really likes. It's called bialy, and he describes it as baked dough and yeast seasoned with diced onions. I've never had this. I'd love to try it. Have any of you guys had this?
Absolutely
Never had
not, but I would try it.
No.
Every once in a while, Arthur brings in food from other cultures that I'm always just like, that actually sounds really good. I want to try that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate them keeping that going. And that's the end of that one. And now, a word from us kids. Foxy, were you expecting this to happen in the middle of your cartoon live action segment with children?
I think if I thought about what I was watching for half a second, it would not have caught me by surprise. Because as soon as it started, I was like, oh yeah, this is children's programming. This is absolutely what Sesame Street would do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in this Word From Us Kids, we are with the Beaver Summer Camp, and they are engaging in activities where they are blending ingredients together, just like Rattles' blended family. So that involves them, like cornstarch and water they're mixing together. They mix together ingredients to make ice cream, to make like those chemical reactions that you make in science class. You know, a lot of these Word From Us Kids segments are pretty... Sometimes they don't even like tangentially relate to the Arthur content we just saw, but it is pretty much this age group of kids doing potentially related, maybe not related activities in their school or their camp or what have you.
I do appreciate that they do try to, like, relate this back to, like, the idea of the blended family, honestly.
The only thing I have to say about that is that there was a funny part where a kid spilled cornstarch and just said matter-of-factly, that was not successful.
I feel like I really like this little segment in the sense of, like, if I was a kid, I would thoroughly enjoy these little experiments. Just the science of it all is so intriguing and fun.
Yeah, like this again. Talking about unlocked memories, as soon as I watched this segment, I was like, "Oh yeah, I did do this kind of stuff when I was in elementary school." Like, I'm pretty sure I did do the, like, water and cornstarch thing, and like I saw them playing with it. I immediately remembered, like, oh my god, I did do that. That was fun, and oh yeah, I made ice cream too. Like, I did feel a little nostalgic watching this segment.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it. Like, yeah, every once in a while there comes along something where it sparks a little bit of a memory of either a field trip that you took or something that you a subject that you covered in school. So these kids, let me see here. If this was like, they're probably like, if not getting ready to leave high school, they've already left high school at this point. This is like 10 years ago.
Boy, oh boy.
Man. I'm getting closer to the grave.
I don't want to think about it.
Hi, everybody. It's Lucas, your favorite co-host from Elwood City Limits. I want to remind you folks that if you like listening to the podcast, first and foremost, the best way to spread the love is to tell a friend who is interested in Arthur or podcasts or animation or hearing about Nova Scotia for some reason. But there's some other things you could do as well. For instance, you can follow us on social media. Twitter is at ECL Podcast. The Instagram is at Elwood City Limits. My pet project, the Twitch channel, which we do live streams on sometimes, twitch.tv/Elwood City Limits Pod. And we also have a Facebook and Tumblr as well. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and youtube.com/Elwood City Limits. That's where Will has been diligently uploading all of the episodes if they're not on your podcast listening service of choice. If they aren't on one of those services, let us know. You can reach out to us on social media or via email at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Finally, the Patreon is where you can find all of our paywall content, patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. This gives you access to the Discord, where we have a bustling community, as well as some exclusive videos, audio bonuses, such as commentary for the various Arthur movies and more, as well as some of our additional podcasts for the kids, is where me and Will cover all the PBS shows that aren't Arthur, as well as ECL Origins, where we really talk about any show from our childhood that we want. And most importantly, you get early access to every episode of ECL. You get to flex on your friends that you're getting it a week early. You can join for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. And now, back to the show.
And now, back to Arthur.
Let's think about the second half of our Arthur episode, which is called Staycation. And this is an example of a cold open that takes advantage of the fact that a lot of Arthur cold opens are in this, like, flexible reality where basically anything can happen. So in this one, Arthur and DW, and at first I thought they were playing a video game, but it's a metaphor. They are attempting to rid their kitchen of these slime creatures and other critters such as rats and bats, and they're using these super soakers. They have these gas masks on, kind of look like Hunk from Resident Evil 4, and they are trying to keep everything in control in the house while Mom and Dad read Chill Outside.
I think I appreciate the sort of Ghostbusters, like, backpack thing. It's just different enough that they won't get sued.
Yeah, for sure. This definitely it confused me in a way where it's like, because I've watched enough Arthur to know that, like, sometimes an episode does open on like a flashback or like a dream sequence or something, but like I don't know, like this was framed in a way where I thought like, oh, this is just going to happen in the episode, I guess. I don't, maybe that's just me.
Well, in a way, Colton, didn't it?
Hey, you know what? You got me there. You got me.
There's one thing I wanted to bring up here. I'll fill this in for I guess for Foxy, who I'm to understand. Foxy, you have feelings on DW that I want to talk about as we go further into this. But one thing that's established about DW's character frequently is that she can't read. Like, she's 4 years old.
Yep.
And it's just like she doesn't know how to read yet. She's very much at a below basic reading level, which is why I was thrown off when there's a part where, you know, Arthur says, slime at 6 o'clock. DW looks at the clock and she says, it's not 6 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock. I'm like, wait a second. DW can't read, but she can tell analog time?
Sure.
She's a priority set.
I guess so. I feel like it took me, like, I remember reading a book that told me how to tell time. So I definitely did those in the opposite order.
Well, I guess we could say I hope somebody got fired for that blunder. Am I right?
I wouldn't go that far, but pushes up glasses. Interesting. So, Staycation is about Mom and Dad Reed. They are originally going to go on a 2-night vacation to a lake together. But wouldn't you know, Grandma Thora, who was named in the cold open of the first story, has to cancel babysitting because her flight to Cancun was canceled. So then that cancels the lake vacation. Anybody catch the cereal?
Yes, I did. I thought that was great. DW is eating a bowl of ooze?
I went with ooze.
Yeah, ooze sounds right to me.
Oh.
But actually, Colton, if I say ooze, then it sounds like ooze, but I mean ooze.
Yeah, as in like, ooh, I'm a ghost. Ooh, you know. Yeah,
yes, but not like Secret of the Ooze.
Yeah.
Like OOZE, but like OOHS, which, I mean, if you're doing, talk to your point, if you're doing ooze, then it would be 3 O's. This is ooze.
Oh.
Yeah, you know what? I did notice that. I was kind of like, there should be a 3rd O there. That does kind of bother me a little bit, actually.
I think it's more importantly, it is a ghost themed cereal, which makes me think these are like it's like at least in fall, which means there are probably like, I guess this is like the equivalent of your blueberry, and I would wonder, what is the Count Chocula even like? Mm-hmm. It's like
Frankenberry,
your Frankenberries and everyone else.
Yummy Mummy, is that one?
I think so. There's a new one out now, and I don't remember her name.
There's like a fruit one.
Ooh, her.
Yeah, she looks kind of like a DJ / e-girl or something. I'm not really sure what they were going for.
The scariest monster of them all.
They're just called E's.
No, they're called nses.
Oh, I think her name is Caramel Carmilla. I think I have that right.
Okay.
Oh, I got it. Carmela Creeper.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. That's a lot better. Colton's version sounded very inappropriate for children.
She is like a DJ. Hang on, I'm gonna send a picture of this to the chat.
I genuinely was going off a memory of like what her name was, because I know I had seen her box of cereal in like the grocery stores the past couple times I've been there, and it's like, oh, there's a new character. That's kind of cool, I guess.
So, is there a Mr. Carmela Creeper? Interesting. I never knew about this. I didn't even know that they were I knew about Monster Mash cereal, but and Fruit Brute, right? Anyway, man, there's a lot of monsters, and apparently, teenage girls are the biggest monster of them all, according to Count Chocula. Also, with the last thing on this ooze cereal is, oh my God, Brian, there's a message in my alphabet. It says ooh.
Peter, those are Cheerios.
Peter, those are ooze.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one who thought that.
So mom and dad read out their vacation canceled. Before they get it canceled, DW is very upset because she wants to go with them. But then Arthur shushes her, is like, when parents go away without their kids, they feel guilty and bring home presents. Which is some serious kid tech there.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Also, I'm sorry, I want to go back real quick because I did have a question.
Yes.
So
Yes,
we
please.
saw in that shot of the grandma still in Cancun, and then I do remember this character, Mrs. McGrady, who
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong, I think is like a part of the school. I think she's the lunch lady or something. Like, so are they friends?
They're friends.
Okay, because this felt like really random to me, and was like, oh, I didn't know like these two characters hung out, but I guess that's kind of neat actually.
Yeah, they're very good friends. They go to bingo nights together and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
That was definitely a direction to take it because the other option is it was.
That's what I thought
getaway.
too, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to immediately go to that, but I did think of that as a possibility.
It's not that, like, who's to say?
We don't know. We'll find out in the future.
Okay,
I'll let you decide.
I was genuinely wondering, like, oh, are they like good friends or are they like good friends? You know, again, air quotes. You know,
It's not for me to speculate.
That's fair.
I mean, it is for me to speculate because I have an Arthur podcast. I will say, sure, maybe. I don't know.
If you want them to be.
Yes, exactly. In the relationship is in the eye of the beholder, and at least with these ones, it's like, well, they are both of consenting age, so I don't feel weird about thinking about it. So go by all means, go nuts with that one. So the vacation gets canceled. DW and Arthur, especially DW puts this forward, which I like. They want to create a staycation for mom and dad so that they can have their vacation in the backyard while Arthur and DW take care of everything indoors. And they do have a lifeline outside. So they have DW's named as communications officer since Arthur is in charge. So if anything really goes wrong, they can just call the cell phone and it'll be good. And at first this goes pretty well. DW and Arthur change baby Kate's diaper. DW carries it away on a badminton racket, which I thought was very funny. They also fix the TV, which was just a battery issue. And Arthur reminds DW because she very much wants to like call them at anything going wrong. But Arthur takes a look outside and kind of shows her like, look at them having fun. And DW says, Mom and Dad having fun without me?
That definitely felt like a DW.
Yeah.
We get it. I also just want to briefly note here, Buster is in this episode as well. Buster, who is Arthur's best friend. He has an alien mask with light up eyes. This screamed Tokusatsu villain to me.
Oh man. I just thought, man, I kind of want that mask.
Yeah.
The eyes are legit. Like they are actual like halogen lamps in there or something.
Which makes me wonder, how can you see through that?
You know what? Good question. I didn't think about that actually.
You know what? I genuinely didn't think about that. I was like, yeah, flashlight eyes. That's a thing that can happen, and I never questioned
that
it.
won't blind me at all.
I mean, if it goes one way and you have slits underneath it, then I guess that's how you see.
Probably. I could see that.
I guess that would work.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I suppose in a real mask, the flashlights would be above the eye, not in the eye itself. But
Yeah.
I don't know. This eventually and predictably turns to chaos.
As soon as DW went toward the bathroom with the diaper, I knew this was going someplace I wouldn't like.
I feel, Foxy, that as I was like, I saw your tweet, as I mentioned earlier, and it was like, I could feel the stress and anxiety coming through the computer screen, the phone screen. And this is before I had even watched the episode, and I'm like, I can't wait. And this is truly, this is some real stressful stuff going on right here. let's go down the list here because I wanted to put the good deeds up top because they did manage to do a couple things right, like Arthur changing the baby's diaper, like all this kind of stuff. So earlier, Brain fixed Arthur's TV problem. He couldn't turn the TV on, and he changed the batteries. But then he offered to rig the TV, the computer, and the lights together through the electrical system.
That part is where I lost it because it's like, oh, they can't turn on the TV. Okay, that sucks, but whatever. I do love that. Like, okay, Arthur calls his friend Brain over, and it's like, oh, okay, you just need to do batteries. Hey, also, do you want me to rewire your entire house? Just feel like that's kind of a leap, honestly.
And Arthur didn't really say yes.
He just let it happen.
I get that the Brain is like supposed to be like the smart kid of the show. I don't know, man. You did all that for free? That had to have been.
Yeah, you should be charging people for that stuff, man. Like that. Like if you want to like if you have like everything rigged up, you have like smart toasters and stuff like that, then yeah, sure, help them out. Like you get charge an hour for $100 an hour at least.
Hey man, if you don't charge, then people can't ask you for their money back.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Then these things kind of happen at different times. Like this is like the Brain stuff happens in the background. DW, part of one of the roles she assumes is feeding the birds that are on the roof outside of her bedroom, and then some of them get inside, like a bluebird and a crow. This is I mean, there are plenty of internet videos about, and I've had the experience as well of like a bird getting in your domicile and sense just goes out the window. You're just like, everything turns to like, I need it to leave. How do I get it to leave?
How do I unfriend this bird?
The timing of this episode is really weird because like a couple of weeks ago, a bird did get trapped in my apartment building, like on the 3rd floor, and I had to go up because I think this bird was like trapped for like a while because the windowsill just like covered in bird poop. I don't know how long this bird was in our top floor.
Oh my
and like
God.
I spent like 10 minutes trying to like lure it downstairs out through the back door, and it was just it was an experience.
And as DW later says, because she was feeding the birds and she left the window open so the birds came in, she had a great line, I don't know what Arthur would do without me. He wouldn't even know about the bird if it wasn't for me.
What's funny is that that problem actually started way ahead, even before the staycation idea. Where like when they were feeding it, like you see the bag breaking and all the bird feed falling off out of the bag in a room. So it's like this was set up to fail way ahead of time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I really don't think she was supposed to be feeding them. I really doubt that's a regular chore.
I don't, I feel like there are bird feeders, and I think that's probably some cities probably say like you can't actually have those out because it's probably not good for the wildlife in case like squirrels and stuff like that try to get in there, because sometimes they do. I think my girlfriend's family has like a bird feeder that they use, but it's rigged up in a way that way squirrels don't get at it.
We had to take down our bird feeder because not too long ago there was bird flu going around, so we were told to take the bird feeder in so as not to like encourage them to keep coming by. The next thing is that, and Foxy, you alluded to this, DW brings the diaper into the bathroom, and as we later learn, she flushed it down the toilet, which then causes the toilet to back up and overflow.
That stressed me out because DW is like, again, carrying the dirty diaper on a tennis racket, dumps it down the toilet, flushes it, and it kind of like takes them a bit for them to get back to it. And the whole time I was just thinking like, when is the other shoe going to drop on this? There's no way that actually went down the toilet.
I think it reminded me of having to, I guess, not fix a toilet, but scramble to figure out what's wrong with it. I think we're in a new apartment, and for whatever reason, we noticed that there was water building up around the toilet, and we were like, "What's this?" And we were like, "That's weird." And something splash damage happened, one of us or something like that. But it turns out that like one of the screws underneath I guess the tank, that's where the water is held in, was loose enough that water would actually drip out from it, and it would slowly build. I didn't realize it was happening, and then at a certain point, I'm like, well, let me see what's going on, and then I notice it. I feel around, and then I feel the screw loose, and I'm like, okay, let me turn it. It's not turning the way, and then slowly the water kept coming out,
no.
and I'm like, oh no, oh no. And I quickly am like, what do I do? What do I do? It's keep going. Oh, it's on the second floor too. I'm like, where's a bucket? Okay, there's a bucket outside. Run downstairs, get the bucket. Let me come up here. And then I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Should I call maintenance? It's already 5:00. Maintenance is closed now. Okay, let me see what happens. Let me call the front desk. And it's like, it's like not 5. It's like 5. It's like 4:58. Let me call the front desk. And I'm like, hey, front desk, how do I fix toilet? And they're like, hang up, call back, and we'll direct you to that thing. I'm like, okay, cool, call back. And then I'm like, okay, I have a message. Oh, crap. They call me. They're like, oh, hey, we heard toilet. And I'm like, yes, please. And they come in, quickly fix it. And I'm like, I am over 30 years old. I probably could have fixed this with a proper tools. But here I am, like, scrambling like an idiot. For something like this,
Doc, this story is a little too relatable. I just want to let you know that.
Okay.
No, there's nothing that makes me feel like less of an adult than when I have to call the landlord to be like, I broke the dishwasher. I don't know how to fix it.
I've been through that too. I hate it. Literally, dishwasher got backed up. They came in, took a look at it. Told me, oh, we're going to order you a dishwasher. Obviously, this is during, like, COVID, peak pandemic times. So it took, like, 2 months for them to even get back to me and be like, oh, yeah, our production line's backed up. You'll have to wait. And I'm like, okay, cool. I literally went 8 months without a dishwasher, and it was one of the worst times in my life, I have to say.
Yeah. I think this is where, like, I relate to Arthur in this moment where it's like, I know I can I should call someone, like, that's literally their job to do, like, in the early stages of, like, oh, there's just a little water coming out. I could have done this, but no. I was like, oh, don't worry. There's no reason for me to do that. I'm sure they're busy. It's already after 5. There's probably no reason for them. Oh, I'm sure that I'm taking up their time. I'm like, they're paid to do this. I don't know why I didn't bother. I mean, yes, the parents are not paid to do this, but still. At a certain point, I think you have to realize that some things are kind of out of your hands and you kind of need help.
Yep.
Yeah, you go from like, why can't I do this, to be like, I can't. And the final piece of this chaos is that they successfully put Kate down for a nap, but then, as you do, when your friend comes over, you toast bread for him, and Arthur left the toast in the toaster, and it causes the smoke alarm to go up, and that wakes up Kate.
Yeah, like it wakes her up, and like birds are also in her room, and yeah, this was around the point where I'm just like, oh my god, yeah, everything's just falling apart. What is going on here?
It's really, really well put together chaos of just all of these noises and situations, and you're just like, it's accurate to how I feel when there's like 3 or 4 different things I want to do at the same time, and I'm just like doing that little dance of like, like you're kind of looking around and just like, I can go somewhere, but I want to go everywhere, but you can't. And this is finally where they call in the cavalry. Mom and Dad, they pitch in, everybody saves the day, and they end off with a campfire outside. Now, I want to go back to Foxy here for a second. As someone watching this for the first time, what was your first impression of DW specifically through all this?
She very much felt like an agent of chaos. So I had to...
You want to know how she got those scars?
I had to go ahead and look up the ages for the children in order to adjust my expectations. Once I realized she was 4, it became... And Arthur was 8. It became less of a, okay, this child is deliberately evil, and more of, it was incredibly irresponsible of the parents to think that they were at a stage in life where this would be okay. You cannot leave your 8-year-old to take care of your 4-year-old and your infant. That's nuts. I don't care that you're just outside in the yard. And like putting the 4-year-old in control of contacting you is also wild. They should have just put the baby monitor like in the living room and just listened to what the kids were doing. Like that would have been a better choice than leaving it in the baby's room. It seems like the baby did the least damage in this episode. Like, first of all, if I'm on vacation at home, you cannot bring other children over to my house. Like, that's the first part where this started to go wrong. Like, your TV's not working, and you called another child over to my home, to my domicile, where I am not with my other children. The kids that undoubtedly, if something happened to them, I would be responsible for what happened to them, because no other parent is going to believe, oh, I was on a staycation in my backyard and I let my 2 small children be in charge.
Yeah, especially if you use the word staycation. Like, a lot of, like, mercy is going to go out the window.
Yup.
Absolutely. I feel like that's immediately a CPS situation. I think that stressed me out more at the end of it as I started to think about it. Like, and then the parents should know DW well enough to know that 4 is not the age for responsibility when it comes to this child. And I blame them fully for why she decided to become a cop.
Oh my
I
God.
forgot about that.
I've never forgotten about that. It's one of the biggest betrayals that I've ever felt from a television show.
Top 10 anime betrayals. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're talking about the parents real quick.
No,
I want to go back real quick. I get the feeling that during that cold open, when they were like, do you hear something? Nope. I just want to believe that, like, they were just pretending they didn't hear anything, honestly, because that's I wouldn't blame them, you know?
No, I think that's definitely a very valid interpretation of that. And again, in that flexible reality that the cold opens are in, sure, absolutely. Like, I could see them just being like, they die. Staycation, baby.
Honey, we're already on a
Staycation's
staycation.
all I ever wanted.
And yeah, they have a nice little campfire outside to end off the episode as the birds take over DW's room.
I am surprised they're allowed anything after how much water damage was made on the upstairs that will probably leak into the bottom floor. The idea of, like, oh, I have to worry about mold now.
How long did it take for them to get all those birds out of the house? Why is this 8-year-old rewiring our entire house? Come on.
Well, and to Foxy's point, I think that is... it can be a talking point sometimes, is that Mom and Dad Reed, when you get down to it, fairly permissive in critical situations.
Okay.
So they're certainly not, I would not call them strict. They sometimes give the appearance of that, but their track record shows to being a bit more permissible than not. So I think that's a very valid interpretation of that.
Here's a question. Are they more permissive than Caillou's parents? That's what I want to know. Because like a criticism I've heard, and I watched Caillou as a kid, but obviously it's been a while since I've watched the show. A criticism I kept hearing as an adult was, oh, Caillou is an awful little child, and his parents literally do nothing to, like, teach him how to behave or anything. Like, they just kind of let back and, you know, just kind of watch it happen, you know?
I would say, because we did an episode of our side series for the kids, a PBS Kids podcast about Caillou, where we sat down and watched it, which I think that a lot of the hate for Caillou is overblown if you watch an episode of the series now. Now, granted, Caillou can be very annoying, so I think that pushes people's buttons a lot. Now, I think that I want to say, again, only having seen like an episode recently, I feel like there are more opportunities where Caillou's parents have to kind of give him boundaries, let's say, versus Mom and Dad Reed. There's definitely a point earlier in the series where they are a bit more strict as parents, or at least they are kind of the final word on situations. Where we are right now, they factor in a lot less. A lot of the adult characters have taken a backseat role at this point in favor of the kids. And I think that it's very rare to have them be the figures of discipline in the house. So I guess it kind of depends on which era of whatever you're talking about. But I think a big part of the Caillou show is him growing up and then discovering where his boundaries are as a kid and pushing against them, and that involves the parents often having to make those boundaries.
Okay.
So yeah, that's unless there's anything you guys want to add to about either of these, we can get into final thoughts. And I think usually we do like, we talk about each episode kind of back to back, but I think what I would be more interested in doing is I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on the episodes individually as well, but I'll go to each of you and I would just like to ask about how you feel about this specific episode that we watched and where you are with Arthur after having watched it. So Doc, we'll start with you because you've been on the show before. With this specific episode, with this era of Arthur, how did you feel after having watched both of these?
Felt all right. I think this is one of those things where I watched this and I was like, if I had kids, I would feel completely cool with them watching something like this. Mm-hmm. It seems, like, how do I word this? Safe.
Yeah.
A very safe show. Very. I think it's like it doesn't necessarily feel like they're like talking down to any of the children. It's like, I mean, hello, fellow kids aside from like the first part of the episode. I think it does lend well to like, here are ideas that maybe children think about, like, because it's like, hey, here's a situation where a child of divorce is now coming into like a new family, or at least that their parent is remarrying. So how does it feel for that as a child of divorce? I kind of understand how that feels. Not to like the degree of that where like, or I wouldn't say luck out, that's the wrong phrasing, but I didn't have any when my parents remarried. I think they didn't have respective children at the time, so I was still the only child, so I got all the benefits.
Nice.
But even something as simple as like the second episode where, it does add to this sort of like, hey, here's a kid who feels like he's growing up. So like, what if he had more he thinks he has more he can have more responsibilities because it feels like he's older enough, he can do it. Realizing the hubris would end up costing them probably thousands of dollars in water damage in the future is probably kind of the funny part of this entire thing. But I thankfully didn't do that with my parents because I wouldn't be here right now. But I enjoyed it. I thought this was actually, it was nice. It was cute. I enjoyed this. It's kind of nice. They're like, here's a story about some characters that I barely know. So I was like, I can kind of, it's easy to kind of, it's accessible. It's very accessible. I think that's the word I was looking for.
So that was your thoughts. Whip Mix Blend. What about Staycation?
I think, I know I did probably a little bit of both. Sorry, I know I was going all over the place, but yes.
That's all right.
This, like, I guess to reiterate, Staycation probably felt like this, like, a story of like a child feeling like he is old enough to handle more responsibilities, and who cares about his parents? It's like, hey, they're busy like taking care of our stuff. Let them have like a moment in the sun for once, because trust me, as someone who also just recently who just got a dog and having to deal with all of the things that responsibilities that I didn't have beforehand has been difficult. A lot of it you probably won't even hear in this audio, as I was scrambling last minute to do some stuff. So, hopefully I edited it all out before I gave you the audio. But I thought it was fun. I thought it was nice. It was very cute. A cute couple of episodes.
Colton, over to you. This is a bit of a return to Arthur for you. How did it feel going back to it, and what did you think of these stories specifically?
I'll get my thoughts about the stories out of the way first. I thought the first one was pretty interesting, actually. Again, exploring characters that, like, even when I did watch Arthur here and there, I barely kind of remembered. Like I remember they existed, but I definitely don't remember watching any episodes like focusing solely on them. So like getting to kind of spend time with characters that like I hadn't before was kind of cool. And I think this episode's actually pretty valuable for like, maybe for kids in general, but like kids who maybe are kind of in this situation where it's like, oh, maybe their home's a little broken up due to divorce. And, again, maybe they have to become part of a blended mixed family or whatever. Like I could see a kid sort of in that similar situation, I think would find this episode really valuable as like oh, hey, like that's me. I'm going through that like as well or whatever. I relate to Rattles. Like I really like the inherent value of that. So I do respect this. I guess I respect the A story here on this one. I thought that was done pretty well, like in a way that kids who may or may not be in that situation could like understand, like that's tangible to them, Whereas, like, I think the B story, Staycation, like, it was just kind of like a fun little episode. Like, just usual Arthur antics, and that's about where I'm at there. Also, I was going to say earlier, man, if I were these parents and I came inside to, like, all the possible damage that my 8 and 4-year-old respectively caused, I would be a lot more upset. I would not be as cool. I'd be like, get these other kids out of my house. They're not coming back for a week. You're going to help me get all these birds out, clean up the water. It just, yeah, I would not be as cool. Got to give them credit? I don't know. So yeah, overall, I thought this episode was pretty fun. As like a return to Arthur, like this was kind of nice, even though, again, this is an era of Arthur that I'm not familiar with whatsoever. I forget if I told you off mic or not. I actually have been trying to go through the backlog of Elwood City Limits because, like, it's a podcast that, like, after I heard Doc's guest appearance on, I was like, I should like listen to more of the show. Like, I haven't visited Arthur much in a while, so I actually have been trying to watch like, the first couple episodes of like season 1 and being kind of like nostalgic and being like, oh, I think I remember watching this on TV. Oh, this show's a lot funnier than I remember. So yeah, I genuinely have been like enjoying my kind of like look back into Arthur, whether it be on here or kind of on my own time. And Will, I promise I'm not saying this because I'm on the show, but I genuinely do enjoy like what I've listened to of the show so far.
Well, thank you. I also hear the show is pretty good, so I appreciate the feedback. I'll have to listen to it sometime. And finally, Foxy, I'm so interested to hear what you have to say as the newcomer to Arthur.
Again, this is a lot of pressure.
Well, and I've enjoyed what you've said so far. Like I think you've already made a couple of observations that are a bit harder to come by if you are in the Arthur bubble as much as myself or anyone else who has been watching Arthur from, like I started watching from like the day it debuted essentially, and it's kind of never left my brain. But as somebody who has the complete opposite experience, I've enjoyed what you've had to add, and yeah, I guess to sum it up,
I do think that the rattle side of the episode was sweet in its own way. I too, I think, would not have known what to do. not necessarily with Ansel. I think I just would have yelled at him eventually. Like, I'm not interested in any of this competition, and you need to stop, or I'm gonna stop you. I forgot the girl's name, but
Angie,
I don't know what I would have done. I don't think I would have been able to communicate with her in any way. I just would have been like, I'm just gonna wear headphones, and if you need something, hand signals. So I appreciate that the Rattles eventually like sat them down and talked to them about it. Like, hey, if you're gonna be my brother and sister, hopefully forever, we're gonna have to like reestablish this family dynamic. I kind of let you guys run wild on me this whole time, and because I guess I was trying to make a good impression, because this is important to my mother or whatever, but now that this is directly impacting my life, you guys are gonna have to chill. And I liked that he stood up for himself in that way, and like Angie and Ansel, like, they didn't react badly to it or anything like that. It was just kind of like, oh, I didn't realize you didn't like these things. So that was really, I think that's a good lesson for kids in standing up for themselves and like having difficult conversations and how they can often turn out to not be as bad as you think they are. The second half of the episode, Colton described it as fun. This was not fun to me. This is too much. This is just like my elderly Black Caribbean side. It's just like I would put these children out of my home and I would just never think about them again. But no, I appreciate that Arthur like really thought about his parents in that way. I think that offering them this kind of vacation, I think, was a really empathetic thing and something that most children at that age would not perceive about their parents necessarily, how stressed out they are. Like, a lot of kids probably would just be like, oh, well, I guess you're not going anywhere, and ask about lunch or something like that. And I appreciate that he made that effort. I think obviously the parents should have established more ground rules and like did their best to be more in control of the situation. But I get it. You have 3 children. One of them is nuts. The other one is a baby. It would be very difficult to not just like seize your opportunity at freedom. My only other criticism would be like, you have to know other responsible adults, even a responsible 14-year-old. You have to know somebody. To just decide to do this for the weekend is a bit mad.
They did at least say that they went through like all of the babysitters they know and they were all busy because it was last minute. So they did at least do that work.
I don't know. You got to find like an after school program to put these kids in last minute. Just like have them like hang out at a football team practice and like make one of the assistant coaches watch them, something.
Yeah.
But yeah, like overall, I think this is like a solid 7.5 out of 10 or something like that.
Well, I'd say that's pretty good for a first watch. And really, I think that if specifically Foxy, if you're ever interested in watching more, and this is where my bias comes in, as many longtime listeners know, it's the first couple of Arthur seasons are, of course, when the show started, when I started watching, but I still think they hold up really, really well. So I would definitely recommend that you go back to those, and I can give you individual episode recommendations if you're ever interested. But I'm so pleased that you took this on, and that not just you, but all 3 of you guys were able to come here and join me. So I'll just quickly sum up my thoughts on both, just for posterity's sake. With Whip Mix Blend, I actually really, really liked this. I loved the Rattles lore and finding out more about him specifically. He's secretly one of the show's most interesting characters. I love Tough Customer episodes. They practically never disappoint. And I thought this was an interesting way to tell a story about a blended family, and to do so in a way that felt very natural. And, it wasn't overly sappy or saccharine, and was actually quite funny and in both intentional and unintentional ways when we're talking about the slang and all that kind of stuff. So I really like this. It's one of my favorites of the season so far. With Staycation, a nice light episode. We've had some good light episodes this season in terms of like, it doesn't really, we're not doing a whole lot of growing here. We're not rethinking the Arthur episode. It's just kind of like a fun little adventure that they get into. And I do appreciate that the idea of the Staycation came from a generous place within not just Arthur, but DW. DW was the one who put it forward. And I think that means a lot to me because she's 4 years old. Having taken care of a 5-year-old recently, it's like they can only be so understanding of other people. Their brains are just too small. They're not developed yet. So it was really nice to have her do that. And the way it all went to hell was actually a nice little Rube Goldberg machine to see unfold, and the chaos was truly something. I thought it wrapped up a little quickly, a little easily, but it's just a nice little light episode, except for the part where everything absolutely goes to Hellraiser Town in terms of the house gets turned upside down. But that was fun too. So yeah, good pair, and I'm again really glad to be joined by you guys here. So this is, as I mentioned before, this is closer to what you can expect from the Wheel of Scoob podcast. So guys, end of the episode here, I would like for you to take the opportunity to plug your stuff, including the Ass Backwards Anime Podcast network, the Wheel of Scoob, and your individual podcasts, which I know are many. And I'll have the cut button ready in terms of when I'm editing this. But please let everybody know what kind of podcasts you do and where people can find you.
Shoot, Colton, you want to go first?
I can go first. Hi, I'm Colton. You can find me on Twitter, if it exists still. I don't know, at SniperKing323, also on Blue Sky, if that's your fancy. I host and produce a lot of my own podcasts, even outside of the Ass Backwards Anime Podcasting Network, that you can listen to and check out over my personal blog at coltoncorner.wordpress.com. It's basically my own personal little blog for whatever I want to do. I barely use it, but it's mostly a place for me to host a page where I try to catalog basically any podcast that I'm a part of, even stuff that I'm not doing anymore, but I still want to link anyway for posterity's sake. Even guest spots and other podcasts I've done, like Elwood City Limits. So yeah, I've been podcasting for 10 years. Still can't believe that. That's really scary to say out loud. But I've been doing stuff on my own with Doc and Foxy, with a lot of my close friends for years now. I guess the one thing that's not affiliated with the Ass Backwards Anime Podcasting Network that I will plug is Another Day, Another Adventure, which is a Dragon Ball watch-through podcast. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball, I host it with my good friend Sakaki, who we're basically attempting to go through the entire animated Dragon Ball franchise. A keyword attempt. Right now, we're in the middle of the original 1986 Dragon Ball anime. I think up to the Red Ribbon Army arc, if I remember correctly. That's been a lot of fun. I genuinely enjoyed talking about Dragon Ball. It's again, I mentioned earlier, it's one of my hyperfixations that I like to podcast about. So if people want to listen to anything that happens to not be a part of the Ass Backwards Anime Podcasting Network, listen to Another Day, Another Adventure. Add Another DB Pod on Twitter. It's wherever you can listen to podcasts, and I think that's gonna be about it for my stuff.
I guess I'll speak for Foxy on this one, since basically we cover pretty much we're on all the shows that we do. So yeah, the main show, the Ass Backwards Anime Podcast, which is the series that basically started all, like, at this point now almost 15 years. Wow. So I don't know, by the time this episode out, it's probably will hit that 15-year mark. Since it'll be the end of September, more or less. But we've been doing this for a while. Like Fox just said, literally in her bedroom, with just like a Logitech mic, and we kind of evolved since then. I say evolved, but I don't know if we
roller coastered in quality, maybe.
Sure. But we've been doing it long enough that we eventually spun out into making other shows, which include...
You definitely expanded.
For sure.
Yes, we have. Yeah, we've created new shows, including Just a Gintama podcast. So if you're a fan of Gintama, that anime series, which we basically covered from more or less the beginning to the end of the series, but we are currently in a sort of a rewatch phase of covering the anime episodes that we didn't actually got a chance to properly cover on the podcast initially when we started it like around 10 years ago. At this point, and we have another show called One Podcast Prevails, which is a podcast that is dedicated to Detective Conan through the manga of Detective Conan, or Case Closed, as probably it's more known as through Viz. I believe that's at least I know in Canada you guys probably also have Viz. So yeah, so Case Closed. That's a show that is just Colton and I. That we've been doing for a while now, and we're close to 100 episodes on that as well. Gintama is like around 100 something. I've already forgot how many we've been doing for that for however
I think
long.
we're closer to 200.
It's more than the main show somehow.
Somehow it's more than the main show. Yeah, and the main show is basically what we do with Wheel of Scoob, but just more or less about anime. Even though sometimes we delve into stuff that is not anime, it's become its own show. Like it's like anything that we do on our network now is pretty much just stuff that we would have done on the main show anyway, but now you have to actually go through our Patreon. So which is SSAAnetwork.com or patreon.com/SSAA network. So basically all the shows that we cover within like the 3 podcasts that we mainly do, and also exclusive shows like Wheel of Scoob, which is if you've not heard about it, or for the first time listening to it, it is a Scooby-Doo movie podcast where we go through all of these Scooby-Doo movies, basically anything that is over like 30 minutes, more or less. There are some specials and stuff that we don't include, but how we select what movie we watch is that we spin a wheel, and depending on whatever we spin, we talk about on our next episode. We've done like at least 20 episodes so far. And we're not even halfway done with the wheel, and more stuff is coming out, and so even a new movie that I thought was gonna not come out, but luckily is going to come out, is gonna be added to the wheel eventually. I think it should be out probably by the time our next episode comes out. It'll probably be added on there, but yeah, we've been doing that for a little while now. It's one of our more interesting projects. It's exclusive to the Patreon at the moment. Eventually it will get its own feed, but it might take a little while before we actually do that. But if you actually just want to listen to that show, its entry is just as little as $1 to get on our Patreon, and you get access to that, including other shows outside of that. We have other exclusive reviews on different movies and different anime-related stuff, some manga stuff, even like other American cartoons, and all kinds of stuff. Occasionally, we write stuff on there. It's a very catch-all Patreon, essentially. If you contribute enough, hell, you can tell us what we actually what we review at some point. We've had people give us different movies, stuff like, Airplane, if we want. So, and even things like what's it called? Crank.
Oh yeah, Crank.
Yeah, but we've also had like anime-related stuff. We've talked about other stuff on our Patreon, among other things. But yeah, so the Wheel of Scoob is the current Patreon exclusive project that we're working on right now. Will has been on it for at least twice now, and he was a great guest. And if you had more selections, you can probably get a chance to be on it again if you feel like it. All up to you at this point. But yeah, you can go check that out. Like I said, little as $1. And yeah, that's kind of it. If you want to follow me on Twitter, technically I'm on there at SSAA Podcast, and on Blue Sky as well. But the Blue Sky is like a little different. We have the SSAAnetwork.com is the network account on Blue Sky. It's silliness up there. I don't know. We mainly just post whatever comes out on the Patreon. So, yeah, it's a lot. I know it's a lot. So,
and Foxy, anything you want to share about your socials or anything else?
Well, if you want, I'm Dame Dr. Foxy B on everything. But the one show that I do separately from Colton Odd Doc is called Dropping the X. It's an unofficial Hunter x Hunter podcast, and just like the manga, we're currently on hiatus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's funny to everyone who knows about Hunter x Hunter.
Well, guys, thank you so much again for being part of this and for bringing your authentic selves to the Arthur experience, which is all I could ever ask for. And for me, this was great. I'm really pleased to have seen where you all came at with this, and I just love another excuse to be able to talk with you guys on mic or otherwise. Well, I guess it has to be on mic at this point, but on recording or otherwise. So that's Elwood City Limits for this week. Thank you to our guests from the Ass Backwards Anime Podcast Network for joining us. That would be Dr. Colton and Foxy. My name's Will Young, and for Lucas Mancini, out there somewhere in America, we'll see you next time.